Hi team, my name's Anton. I cannot wait to join Prosper for an amazing chat about leadership under pressure. My name's Anton Guinea. I'm the director of the Guinea Group, a company proprietary limited, where we help leaders become better versions of themselves so that they can create high-performing and psychologically safe teams, so that leaders can create high-performing, psychologically safe teams, which is really important work. And we know leadership is. And our focus is leading under pressure. We talk about the strategical, tactical, and activity-based elements of leading under pressure. And strategically, it's control, care factor, and courage. Tactics-wise, it's about emotional regulation, time boxing, and extreme ownership. I cannot wait to talk to Prosper and check out Prosper's other work. His podcasts are amazing. See you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we've got a guest whose life story reads like an action-packed thriller. I mean, minus the explosions, but with all the drama that comes along with it. Well, actually, there will be a few explosions. I've just been talking to Anton, and I can already sense the excitement in the room, and I can't wait to share that with you. Now, Anton, how are you doing, my man?
Oh, Prosper, so well. Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing such great work out there on the planet. So keep up the good work.
The pleasure is all mine. I think it takes two to tango. It must be the guests that I get on the show. And, with the way that we've been going, we've been having a higher caliber of guests. And I'm just looking at you across and what you've been doing since 2005. And I'm just hoping I'm handling this with the white glove service that it actually deserves. So thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
Pleasure.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are wondering why I'm fanboying with Anton, well, Anton has been an electrician facing life-threatening incidents and he has now become a world-class expert in safety leadership. And Anton isn't just about preventing physical hazards. He's on a mission to create psychological safety and high-performing teams out there, and hope that the people that are going to be working in those teams actually feel psychologically safe. Now, if you've ever wondered how to stay calm under pressure or lead with integrity in the most challenging environment, I think this episode is one for you. I can't wait to dive in and discover how Anton has actually transformed his near-miss moments into powerful leadership philosophy, which he is going to be sharing with us today. Now, Anton, your journey into safety leadership, first of all, is both incredible and intense. Maybe take us back to that first origin story, because you did mention there's about 3 of them. So let's start with the first one. What was actually going through your mind when you were blown up in that switchboard at 21?
Prosper, not much really. Survival, I think, really, seriously. So I was an electrician. I hadn't got a job as a tradesperson yet at the time, so I was working with another tradesperson. So I was assisting. I was what's called a trades assistant at the time, and we were doing a really easy job measuring in a switchboard, actually. And I guess the mistake that I made was, and just for your listeners out there, some of them will hear this and go, "Why would you even do that?" And the message was that I think sometimes in life we rush, sometimes in life we think we know everything, sometimes in life we probably get complacent and we don't either ask for help or we don't slow down and have a conversation about something before we dive in. And that's exactly what I did. So I chose a steel ruler to measure in a switchboard. As I put the steel ruler on the switchboard, it got into a place because it was so thin that it shouldn't have. For any electrical people out there, it got in behind the main switch. So it'd be like getting in behind the light switch on your wall. And that, except it was very high fault current, in other words, high energy, and that steel ruler either contacted what we call buzz bars or it got close enough to cause this massive explosion. I love that word, explosion, like you said. And my body came into contact with 20,000 degrees C superheated air called plasma, and it caused 2nd degree burns, not 3rd, thank God. I was lucky that I didn't need any skin grafts. I don't know how I avoided skin grafts after coming into contact with 20,000 degrees C superheated air. electrified air too, because not only do you get burnt on the outside, Prosper, you actually get burnt on the inside because that air is conductive. So it passes an electrical current through your body at the same time. And, I remember pushing myself up off the switch room floor. And as I did, I tore all this, there was a whole lot of flap of skin. And I'm sorry to get a bit dark and a bit gruesome with your listeners, but I just want to put them in the picture of what it's like to be second-degree burnt and not know how bad the burns are, not knowing whether you're going to scar, not knowing whether you're going to survive, because two ambulance drivers on the way to hospital, informed me that you can die up to a few days later from this particular injury. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting comment to make. I thought it was a bit of an overshare, but that's sort of what I was going to intensive care for, to get monitored for my internal signs and my internal health and whether I'd been burnt internally as well as externally. And so, that moment in time, so arc flashes or arc blasts, or let's say electrical explosions, come and go in 0.5 to a second. So they happen very fast. So I call it the spark that changed my life, or, the ignition source for the energy that I've now got now. So it was an absolute life changer, an absolute game changer. And, lying in intensive care, not knowing whether I'd survive, and then off to the burns unit where they do this thing called debriding. So if any of your listeners, you've got such a great product here and you go out to so many people, and I appreciate being on here. And so your listeners are going to come from a variety of fields, and some of them will know what debriding is. Debriding is removing all of dead skin after burning, particularly on your hands. And it's a horrible experience having your skin forcibly removed. And it's a very painful experience, even though I'd had a lot of painkillers. And, I remember Prosper lying in the burns unit, and I made some decisions at the time, and I don't think I made them with clarity because I was 21, and I just knew, all I knew was that I didn't want to become an electrician anymore. I didn't know anything else, but I wasn't going to be a spark anymore. And I had to do whatever it took, because I'm still scared of electricity to this day. People say that, you just get on the horse and, you get back on the horse and you just get back into it. Well, it's not that easy, I'm telling you. Even to this day, I'm still scared of loud noises. PTS, not PTSD, because I was never diagnosed with a disorder, but post-traumatic stress, absolutely. If our switchboard here trips, my lovely wife, Mrs. G, goes and resets it, because I don't like being in switchboards anyway. I had to work as an electrician for a few years just to get off the tools, but I was working on mining gear, so it was low voltage, and so that always felt like it was safer, and it was on mobile equipment, on trucks and diggers and different things, so I went mining after that. But it was the absolute game changer. And because I wanted to get off the tools, it was about studying then. Would you like me, Prosper, to tell your listeners about what happened then and the next couple of origin stories that led to 20 years of leadership training?
Well, let's just debrief on this
cool.
particular one first. I mean, obviously at 21, this would have been the first job that you've ever had, or had you worked elsewhere before?
Well, I finished my apprenticeship. It was the first job that I had as a qualified tradesperson, even though I wasn't working as a tradesperson. So it was probably my second job on planet Earth. There you go. One was for 4 years. The next one lasted for a week before I ended up in hospital wondering if I was going to survive or not.
Wow. Thank God. I mean, you did. But obviously, there's a question that comes about, when you were growing up, being an electrician, was that the dream job, or did you want to do something else, or did that just come about because it was?
What a great question. I never get asked that question, Prosper, and I love it. For the people like yourself who are a little bit philosophical and ask, how did this all come about? I just love answering this one, because I was in grade 12 at a big boarding school in Brisbane, a very prestigious school. And I've just been back for my 35-year reunion at that school. And I love it. I'm a proud old boy of St. Joseph's College in Nudgee in Brisbane. Now, the principal and I, we sat down and we had a heart-to-heart one day. And it was before I'd finished grade 12. And I wasn't a model student, Prosper, I must say. And the principal decided that him and his leadership team had decided that it would be better if I received my education for the rest of grade 12 at another institution, not there. So I know. So that was quite a hit. And so I had to come back to I was at boarding school in Brisbane and I lived in Gladstone. So to come back to Gladstone and you know, I'm 3/4 of the way through grade 12. I wasn't a high achiever, even though I had probably had the potential to be a high achiever. I'm now doing a master's of research and I've studied degrees and I've had really high GPAs. And so it was a matter of not really committing at school, sadly. But, you know, to come back to Gladstone and, you know, really, I sort of, let's say I fell into an apprenticeship because it was available and it was close to home. And, you know, it wasn't something I ever wanted to do. You know, I look back on it and I was never a good fit for the trade. I didn't enjoy it that much. I didn't commit to doing it well. It was just, you know, it was probably a square peg in a round hole at the time. And I think the universe probably gave me the biggest shock that it could to say, hey, you better change your career. And so I love that question, actually. You know, how did I end up becoming an apprentice? Well, I got booted out of school, sadly, because I was just a rat bag. And I think some of your listeners could probably, you know, relate to that story. And, you know, it's probably you know, from, I don't know about rags to riches, but it's from I don't know, very low start I had and to where we are now. So very proud of what I've achieved since then. But yeah, that was, you know, and it's really regretful that I didn't realise what opportunity I was getting at the school that I was at, you know, and I look back and I just wish sometimes I could put an old head on young shoulders and just say to you know, whether it's students or whether it's, you know, new employees or whether it's whoever, never miss an opportunity. Seriously, these opportunities, and you don't even know you're getting it at the time. And, you know, if I could go back and tell my previous self, you do not understand, Anton. This is a life-changing experience. Make the most of it. You know, and I didn't, but I have since. And so thank God I had the accident probably. Here we are now. I've been able to influence a whole range of humans and go on a 20-year journey of public speaking, leadership coaching and consulting that all started then. But then I guess to get in, I'll tell you when you asked the question, but how did it actually all start? How did I make a decision? Someone's already asked me that today. I was telling that story to someone and went and decided to go and tell it to the planet. And here we are.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, because obviously leadership in your life pretty much started when somebody was leading at a point and decided what your fate would be.
Well put. Well put. Based on my behaviour, I guess I've got to take ownership for that. But yeah,
understandable. But what then resulted into that, then, do you know what I mean? Had your path been a different one, maybe we wouldn't have had this particular incident. But that's besides the case, though. I mean, obviously, that's maybe a first sort of encounter with the leadership. And now I wanted to go back to that fateful day at 21. If you were an apprentice, were you not working under somebody else who would have been much more, you know, cognizant of the dangers or anything that would have been happening in that switchboard?
Great question. And the answer is yes. I was working with someone who was really competent. Sadly, I chose to not take their coaching and mentoring and their tutelage, and I chose to rush. And I chose to do something that I knew better. And I put a steel ruler on a switchboard that I shouldn't have. And I rushed a job. And I always say that, you know, I was doing a 10-minute job and I use my hands now because I lost the use of both my hands for 4 to 5 weeks. I was doing a 10-minute job really because I was just measuring in a switchboard. I went home from work about 5 weeks later, after a 5-minute trip to the intensive care unit. And so, you know, the rule of fives, but I want people to remember just how important these things are. You know, 38% of major workplace incidents in Australia are hand injuries. So 1 in 3 affect people's ability to use these. 24% are these, you know, and I always use my hands because I didn't have the use of my hands in the burns unit for 4 to 5 weeks. And I couldn't do anything for myself, Prosper. And that's quite humiliating. The thing that I remember the most, sadly, and block your ears, maybe listeners out there, if this is too graphic, And some of your listeners might have had this experience if they've lost the use of both their hands at the same time, but no one wipes your bum quite like you do. It's too much info, but these are the things, these are the consequences, these are the things that sort of get stuck in your mind when you have a workplace incident like that.
Absolutely. So 5 weeks, in recovery and things of that nature. What was the first thing you did when you got home?
Great question. Well, would you believe now this is just part of the story, and it's such a great part of the story. My lovely wife now, Julie, 30 years married. We married in the same year that incident happened. So this happened forever ago, but still you never forget it. And it's seriously, it could have happened yesterday. Like it just gets locked into your hippocampus, down inside your brain. Here's a brain from side on. But it just gets locked into your hippocampus down there in your memory, just near your limbic system. And you just never forget it because there's so much pain and emotion attached to it. But my lovely wife now, we're in the burns unit, and before I got injured, I'd actually put in for a job in the mines over in WA, and the word came through to the burns unit, would you believe, and to my now wife, that the person was travelling around Australia and they were doing job interviews in Brisbane the day I was getting out of the burns unit. I kid you not. How's that for fate? Like I'd love to timeline all this over time, but that lovely human who I'll never forget. Like I looked weird because my skin was pink, like my eyebrows hadn't grown back, my nails were black. I looked weird, but I went from the burns unit to a job interview. I'll never forget that. And I got knocked back on the first round, and then someone took the job or was selected and didn't take it. And so I got a call up. And all of a sudden I ended up in the mines in WA, working on big trucks and diggers and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, the first thing that I did when I got out of the burns unit was went to a job interview. And then I probably went and had lunch, I reckon, or had a big meal. So I probably went to Sizzlers, I reckon, because you don't get too much good food in hospitals,
Absolutely. And obviously, hats off to you having had this relationship already for you to have somebody to come back to. You know what I mean? It's small things like that very few people actually are grateful for. Like you were saying, somebody wiping your behind is a whole different story. And I'm supposing pretty much during that time she would have assisted in some shape or form, dressing the wounds and things of that nature. Now, as a leader that you have now become, Anton, if you're looking straight in the camera, what sort of words would you have for this woman?
Oh, my proudest achievement on this planet, Prosper, is being married for 30 years. Like I've written 8 books. I represent our country next weekend at the World Championships in triathlon. I've had a business for 20 years. I've worked with hundreds of organizations, thousands of leaders. My greatest achievement on planet Earth and my most grateful achievement is being married to the same amazing human for 30 years. Nothing beats that. You can have anything else that I have achieved that I just wouldn't. That's the one thing that I just could never give up. I'm just so grateful to that human for being around. And I start my sessions by telling everyone that, and I say, Mrs. G still tells me she loves me, which is nice, and I believe her. That's very special. And she still lives at home with me, which is even better. So I think, yeah, for me, and it was funny because my Julie, Mrs. G, because she was a teacher for 18 years, Mrs. G, and everyone calls her Mrs. Guinea. So I still do. Now she's a train driver, which is really interesting. Mrs. G, what was I going to tell you? Can't remember. But she was there through the burns unit days, and what she said was, she actually said she'd prefer not to do any of the physical helping, and she was there for my emotional support. She said the nurses can take care of all of the other, the stuff, and she did a little bit of helping if I was desperate, but really that was the nurse's job. So, but still, she was there for my emotional support, which was appreciated.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we need. We're all societal beings, you know what I mean? That's at your most vulnerable. And at least if you've got somebody around you that can look after you, I think that makes the healing journey a little bit, smoother. Now, you then went on to the mines.
Mm.
Yeah, but you're now, psychological safety leader. Tell us
Mm.
how that sort of
That will
came
happen.
about.
Right. So I decided to get off the tools and I didn't know what to do, Prosper. So I started studying. Everyone that's a supervisor or a leader or someone at a higher level of the business has all got educated. So I went, right. So I reached out to, and we actually never had the interweb when I first started studying. There's a fun fact for you. And so I reached out to an organisation called Monash Uni down near you, actually, and they did this engineering associate diploma for tradespeople who wanted to get off the tools. It was quite a cool diploma at the time. And so I studied that, and then finally, a few years later, I got promoted off the tools, not being a tradesperson anymore, which was a relief. And I've never had to work as a tradesperson again, gratefully. And so I had these real career ambitions, and I think I had career aspirations only because I just wanted to get as far away from the trade as possible. So I decided, and I think it was around the time that I was in the Burns unit, that I was going to climb the ladder of corporate success. And so I spent the next 8 years, and I got to what was called superintendent level. And I got there too quickly, and I got there underskilled, and I got there not ready for the rigors of leadership. I got there in an industrial plant. It was a copper smelter by this time. So I'd gone to oil and gas industry. We'd been to uranium mining as different roles as I was becoming more senior in an organization. I finally got to the point where I was running a couple of teams and I was running hundreds of people. And it was really interesting as a superintendent level, but I was just totally too young, under resourced, underskilled, and I sort of got eaten alive. But what didn't help was the leaders that I was exposed to at the time. I had some really tough leaders, and I'm talking not tough good. I'm talking tough shouty. I'm talking tough swear at you. I'm talking tough. Why do we pay you for this? And I made some blues that really hurt my heart. Like it really hurt. Like I didn't realize just how much it did, because I still think about some of those conversations now, and I just think how brutalized I felt after some of those. And so I, not long after that, we were all made redundant. So I've had plenty of ups and downs. I got made redundant in that job, and my wife and I, Julie, we decided to come back here to Gladstone because we were living away at the time, and so we come back to Gladstone, and I got a job at a local refinery. And I still had that experience of sort of being knocked around as a leader, even though 50-50, yes, not great leadership, but at the same time, I probably wasn't ready for leadership anyway. So I was in a job that, I wasn't prepared for. Anyway, so I came back here to a job in Gladstone, and with that being knocked around and that's still fresh in my mind, I was up here and then it was 10 years then since the Burns unit. And then I had this experience as a leader, and I came back here and I got asked to present at a safety meeting. And I said, look, and the manager said, can you present at this safety meeting? And I said, oh, I'd rather not. Because I said, I don't, I wasn't inspired by any of the topics at the time. I said, I'll present if I can tell you a personal story. Because I had never told this story before. So I told this, and this person said, absolutely, we'd love a personal story. Because you got to remember, 20 years ago, when I first started doing my work, no one was doing it. There was someone in America called Charlie Moorcraft, but there was no one there was one person, James Wood, who in a wheelchair now, and he was a bit ahead of me, but there was really only James and I. 20 years ago, the safety speaking industry really didn't exist in Australia. And so I spoke at this safety meeting and loved it. And then the manager said, that was that good. Can you do it again soon? Yep. So once I'd done it twice, and I looked at people's eyes and I saw the change that it made, and I saw the emotion that it brought up, and I saw the impact that it had. I walked into the manager's office and I said, oh, hi, thanks for letting me do that. I'm resigning. And he said, what? I said, Shane, I've just got to go and do more of that. Whatever happened when I was presenting, there's something happened. I said, I'm going to go and become like whatever that is, maybe a speaker or something, or a trainer or a coach or something. I'm going. I've got to go out and work for myself and do this. And he said, well, you're a bit mad. I said, yeah, I know. He said, what are you going to do? I said, no idea yet. I said, here's my resignation. I've got, I'll give you 4 weeks. I've got 4 weeks to work it out. So off I went. And then I had to come home and tell Mrs. G that between the two of us, we had two people living in the house. Apparently there was only one adult, she said, and it wasn't me. Two people, two kids, two grown-ups, two kids, two mortgages, and no jobs. And she said, that's an interesting sort of place to be for us now that you have resigned. And I said, yes, I know. I said, trust me, babe. She said, well, and I said, we're in this together. She said, really? She said, it doesn't feel like it to me at the moment. So anyway, so I quit my job, came home and told Mrs. G, and here we are 20 years later. And yeah, don't worry, we've been up and down, Prosper. We've been nearly bankrupt. You know, marry an entrepreneur, they said.
So obviously you threw your resignation letter and you walked home, but obviously that wouldn't have been just met with, yeah, that's okay. You grab a chair there and I'll get you your coffee. What was
That's
the
right.
response back home? Because I think there was two kids and two mortgages at that time, and you just left your
Oh,
job.
Mrs. G, most unimpressed. Most unimpressed. Mrs. G was like, because she tells me now, she said, oh, you said at the time, babe, she says to me, you have a vision. And I like now, you know, now I know what it's like to do that. I didn't know back then what that really meant. But I said, I've got this vision of me, changing the world a little bit. You know, you got to think big and global. And I said, oh, I just feel like there's something bigger that I've got to offer. And she still laughs at that now. She said, you always said you had a vision, and here we are 20 years later, and successful business, etc. And I think, yeah, Mrs. G took a little while to get her head around it, and I'm talking years, because to go into business is expensive, Prosper. As you know, you've got to get insurance, and you've got to get, well, it was back then, and all of a sudden we were broke fast, because we were living week to week. Like, it wasn't as if I quit work and we had a big bank account. Like, we were just struggling to pay our home loan. After about 2 or 3 months, I had to ring the bank for the first time ever and say, please don't take money out of our account, because we won't have money to buy food if you take the home loan this week. Like, I don't tell many people that story, but we went like, it was, it had me questioning in my life decisions, let's say, Prosper.
I can,
And so,
I
it
can,
was hard. It was hard at times.
I can only imagine. I remember when I first started, I had nothing but a backpack full of hopes and dreams, and decided, you know what, let's get started on a business. So during that time, my now wife and we, oh yes, we had a daughter, and one winter we went through the whole of winter. I'm just looking out, Melbourne winters. We went through the whole of winter with no heating. So the heating just decided to bust. And that was a $2,500 job that needed to be worked on. And I did not have that. And neither could we afford to have it done. So I can only imagine you started your business without clients, without experience, or even a clear path, with just a vision, like you say. How did you how did you manage? How did you go? I mean, obviously,
Oh, mate, I've got to tell you, the first thing that I did within that 4 weeks, I think the reality of it all hit home, because I knew nothing about business, knew nothing about anything. And so I just started jumping on the phone. So I'm from I'm Generation X, Prosper, and this thing here, I'm happy to I just ring people and, hey, look, I'm going self-employed, and I want to be a speaker. Do you have any speaking work? And they're like, this is probably what they were doing. What's this dude talking about? And so finally, there was a couple of people that I used to work with that I found their email addresses, and the only way I knew to start was people I knew. So I just flicked a few emails out, and I got a few speaking gigs, and then I flicked an email out to a maintenance consultant, because I've been a maintenance superintendent. There was a consulting organisation that said, look, yep, come and do some consulting work for us while you're building this speaking business. So I went, okay, cool, I'll do that. So they gave me a little bit of work when I wasn't speaking, because they knew I was going to become a speaker and a trainer and a coach, obviously, at the end of the day. But so I found a little business that would help, that would hire me on a self-employed basis when I wasn't doing the other work. And I was sort of there semi-full-time, I suppose, for a period. And so that sort of got me through for about the first year. And then as the speaking business grew, and then after about a year, probably between a year and 18 months, all of a sudden the speaking work took off, and we were away and racing. And then about a year after that, I'd been speaking to a whole lot of teams about my incident, and all of a sudden leaders started saying, "Hey, you're speaking to the teams, but what about the leaders? How do the leaders impact their teams? You know, can you do some safety leadership stuff?" And I went, that's interesting. I know zero about that as well, so I better go and learn. So it was reading all the right books, and it was, you know, doing a bit more study, and you know, just finding out about safety leadership. How do leaders impact, influence, inspire behavior in other humans, and particularly in the area of workplace health and safety? You know, because back then, if you looked at the stats, there was up to 300 workplace fatalities in Australia every year back then. Now it's about 180, so we've sort of nearly halved that, but we've been sitting at that same point for the last few years. And yes, the graph has sort of trended down, but it's leveled out over the last few years. And so, you know, a lot of that, safety leaders are responsible for the safety of their teams. But at the end of the day, it's mindset. And so they've got to influence the mindset of their team members to slow down and not take risks, and understand their big five. What are the things, the hands again, what are the big five things they're going to miss? They're going to miss their family, they're going to miss their friends, they're going to miss their fitness or their finances. You know, what are those things that they need to keep front of mind when they're making decisions? And, you know, keep in your frontal lobes, you know, because that's where our decisions are made. And, you know, so it became safety leadership. So for many years, we did a lot of work with leaders in the safety leadership space, and that's sort of what I became known for. And then, you know, and I'd travel around and I'd work with leaders on how to build safe teams and safe organizations. And then I ended up out on a site where we did some project management. And so we had a really successful little side hustle, I'll call it, multiple seven-figure side hustle, that where we did labor hire. So we had project managers and we had people going to sites, and then we lost that contract. So again, we had a little dip in our financials, so we had to rebuild again. And then it was around that time that so we were still doing the safety leadership then, but it was after that I went, you know what? And I saw leadership, and I saw how leadership could be improved, and I harked back to that poor leadership that I'd experienced. And, you know, I really understood then from seeing sites and really seeing leaders in action at the front line. And I thought, you know what, I have to really focus on leadership in general, and I have to make sure that I can do whatever it is possible to help leaders be better humans and be better leaders, to create high-performing, psychologically safe teams. And one of the things that happened was 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago now, on the 25th of May 2021, I was on a power station that blew up. Literally a turbine blew up. Now, you can Google this. It's all over the interweb. I won't tell you the company, but the reports 3 years later have just come out now into what happened. And it was a world scale event. It cut power off to Queensland. It was a significant event, and I was on site for that, and it was scary because it was talking about explosions. There were explosions everywhere. It was next level. It was crazy. The leadership team from that site stepped up, and they did such a good job, Prosper. I'm telling you, it was another. So that's my third origin story. Blown up in a switchboard. Poor leadership who exploded, having worked for leaders who exploded, and going, you know what, I'd never want to be like that ever. And then the third one was actually being on a site that exploded. And, you know, I just loved how those leaders stood up and just did such a good job. And I went, you know what, that's the secret, leading under pressure. Because it's not the day-to-day stuff, it's not the mundane stuff that tests you as a leader, it's when it's under pressure. It's when everything's exploding around you. How do you deal with that? I went, whoa. And so now I've leaned into that so much. Our whole business is focused on that. And that's our thing. And to the point where I'm now doing a master's of research. I've just sent out a survey to people. I'm surveying people now to understand what it is they feel the skills are to be better at leading under pressure. So, you know, that's the mission that I'm on at the moment. That's the the trajectory, because I want to publish that research, because I'm doing a master's of research into humans and into leadership and how humans can be better at dealing with the whether it's the day-to-day stress. It's even on the back of our cycling jerseys, I told you before, leading under pressure. And that's just where it is at for me. It's about giving leaders the skills to stay in control, to consider the care factor when things, because other people are stressing as well, and then have the courage to make the big decisions that they need to make. And there's this whole model that we've built around leadership under pressure that I want to validate through the study, which is really cool. So that's where we're at the moment, and that's why leadership under pressure is so important, because of that third origin story. And I just saw how when leaders do pressure well, the people around them do well. And that's this whole psychological piece. And, I've since done a psych degree to really understand that further. I think I did the psych degree because I'm still trying to unpack, for me, they say that psychologists do psych to fix themselves first. Maybe.
Fantastic. Now, Anton, this is a great, sort of turnaround. I mean, obviously, with what you've been through and everything that has been thrown at you, I mean, obviously, it all came from an explosion. It's like what do they call that? The formation of the Earth was one big explosion.
Oh, Big Bang.
The Big Bang. You know what I mean? So with everything that you have the first was the Big Bang when you were 21, and then the Big Bang in the year 2021. So it really is, something that has just sort of come full circle. But at the end of the day, so many people might say never tell people to stay calm or be calm, especially when they're freaking out. Yes. How do you work with people so they can actually stay calm under pressure?
Right. So I'm going to give you 3 levels, Prosper, if I could, please, because I think we need to talk strategy first. And then I think we need to talk tactics. And then I think we need to talk activities. So I think strategically, if you can stay controlled, so nothing happens when your emotional state is out of control. Nothing good happens. So we always talk about control first. Control your emotions, drive your behavior. So if you can control your behavior, you control the situation strategically. Then there's this care factor. So that's all about psychological connection, psychological empowerment. Even during the toughest times, we still need to empower other people to step up because they need to sometimes be involved. And then there's this psychological connection. What are they going through at the same time? So control. Imagine a Venn diagram, which we've got one, and I should see if I can grab it somewhere for you. But Venn diagram, and I might even send it to you so you can put it with the podcast if your listeners want some. And I've got a heap of stuff for your listeners too, by the way. And then courage to try, tell, and trust. You got to try new things. When you're under pressure, you got to do whatever it takes. You got to be able to tell people, and then you also got to be able to trust humans, right? So strategically, control, care factor, and courage. Now, tactically, time boxing. No, I can say to leaders, and this even happens during stressful situations, which could be just a day at the office if things aren't going right. Show me your calendar and I'll show you your effectiveness. Simple as that. And it's not time management, it's time prioritization. Now, I wrote a great LinkedIn post in this the other day. I was sitting with a leader because we do one-on-one coaching as well as the 2-day training programs, but it's the one-on-one coaching where we get to really influence other humans. And, this leader was stressed and the whole world was coming down on top of them, as it does. And sometimes it feels like that for me too sometimes. And so I said, right, let's take a step back. So strategically, we talked about those things. Tactically, time boxing, again, emotional regulation, that comes up tactically as well, because that is a skill. And then the last one is to take extreme ownership, Prosper. Do you know what? It's no one else's fault. And it's not even your fault. And I love this line out of Good Will Hunting, where Sean Maguire, Robin Williams' character, says to Matt Damon, who was Will Hunting, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. And there was this beautiful moment in the movie where Will Hunting just broke down and he realized that he wasn't to blame. The problem was It was his responsibility to fix it in time internally. And it might not be our fault, but it's our responsibility. And that's this extreme ownership. And I say to leaders, you have to take extreme ownership, not only for the situation, for your personal, your psychological condition, because you're not going to be the best version of you. You can't help another human if you're not psychologically right. So strategically control, care factor, courage, tactically time boxing, emotional regulation, and extreme ownership. Now, activity wise, where do we start, Prosper? I'm telling you, meditate, exercise. I found triathlon. Just stand up, do this, just push your hands up above your head. Physical resilience. Breathe. Hold a breath. No one's been taught to breathe on planet Earth. Stretch. Go for a walk. Talk to someone. Pick up the phone. Like, there are so many activities that people can do to reduce their stress. And this is why people don't do them, I believe, Prosper. They're too simple. Get up, stretch every half an hour, 45 minutes. Take deep breaths. Who do you know that religiously has got breathing in their calendar? Breathing. Like, it's so simple. There are so many strategically, tactically, and then activity level, so many things leaders can do. And I just wish more leaders would lean into and understand the priority of keeping themselves calm. 5 deep breaths changes your emotional state, changes your level of emotional heightenedness. So it brings you down. So hold you, in, hold, out, in, hold, out. Like, it's so simple. But share your story. Go and get some counseling. Talk to a psychologist. Talk to another human. We could go on and on. So I know we're getting close to the end of our time together, which is sad, but that's what I really share with leaders. I share with leaders how many opportunities, and then I ask them to commit to one. Just one. What is it that you're going to do? Are you going to time box? Are you going to get your calendar? Are you going to do a tactic? Are you going to get your calendar under control? Are you going to do an activity? Are you going to do breathing in the morning? Are you going to meditate? Are you going to stretch more? Are you going to walk more? Are you just going to do this, move your body occasionally? What are you going to commit to? And I challenge your listeners out there, Prosper. What's one thing that your listeners are going to do after this when they feel like they're stressed or heightened, when the whole world's coming in? And, we can't just say I'm busy now. We've got to say, leaders got to say I'm crazy busy. How are you? I'm crazy busy. Like adding some emphasis to it, which is okay. I get it. And we all are. You don't have to be, though. Like, you can time box and you can say, so in our business, you're not allowed to say you're too busy. Well, it's not. I just encourage people not to. And we're just being productive. I've got a full calendar. Find different language and that's a whole nother podcast. What's the language you use, and how does that talk to the emotional part of our brain? So,
absolutely. Now, maybe you can tell us what it is that you do with these people. How do they sort of get in touch? And yeah.
Thank you, Prosper. So the guineagroup.com.au or antonguinea.com.au. So we've got 2 websites. antonguinea.com.au is probably the best one if you're looking for speaking work. Our consulting and training work. So I do 1-hour keynotes. I do 4-hour, 1-day or 2-day training. And so that's all about leadership. It's leadership under pressure, but it's really bespoke. Prosper. So organisations might come and they'll say, well, can you do leadership accountability? Can you do leadership robust conversations? Can you do effective communications? My team's in turmoil, Anton, can you do something with them? Yeah, absolutely. And we use a lot of personality profiling. So we use the DISC, we use Resi Coach, we use TMS. So we've got a whole lot of personality profiling for that 2-day coaching or 2-day training. And then I do the one-on-one. And this is where the magic happens, and I've been lucky enough, grateful enough, where people say it's a superpower now. I've done 1,000 plus one-on-ones in the last few years since COVID. And when I got the Remarkables, we talked about this before I came on, and I can look at my Remarkable and see how many coaching sessions I've done with leaders, and it's 1,100 or something in the last 4 years. And, sitting eyeball to eyeball with another leader, it's just a transformative experience for me and for them. And, I'm grateful that I get the opportunity to do that. Like I say, someone told me one time that it was a superpower, but it's that it's just that personal connection and totally focused on another human, and just like you are now. Thank you. Just asking questions, and that's all I do as a coach. I just really try to get to the heart, and with a bit of psychology in there as well, the heart of what's your challenge? Why is that a challenge for you? And what can we do? How can I help? How can I serve with information or support in some way, shape, or form? And we give 24/7 support, so they can call us anytime to make sure that you become the leader that you want to become. So,
Absolutely.
that's how we serve.
Now, Anton, I mean, obviously, thank you so much for all of this. I've got a question for you. Have you ever heard of a concept called Ubuntu?
Love it.
All right.
Ubuntu is, yeah, yes. The short version is yes. I have. There's another public speaker now who's taking it on the speaking circuit around Australia. The camaraderie of team and togetherness.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right. So in essence, I'll just give you a really
Please.
straightforward sort of answer. It's I am because you are. All right. So if we're looking at the time that we are sharing right this moment, Anton, I am a podcast host because I have a guest who is you. All right. I can now become the podcast host because you are there to have an interview with me. Had you not been there, I would have been Prosper sitting in my office. You would have been Anton sitting in your office receiving gifts from Ozpost. All right. So in essence, right now we are doing this podcast because both of us are invested in this time. As soon as we all log out of this, we are no longer podcast host and interviewee. All right. So many leaders are only leaders based on the fact that they have people to lead and they have an opportunity and a time. I can see your mind getting blown behind the scenes. All right. So and if people can actually step into that role of when they are needed as a leader, and they can now literally exercise that calmness under pressure, because you're not a leader 24/7. You're only a leader for only when you're needed. You see, all right. So I kind of feel like what you're taking people through is somewhat of a rite of passage, okay? Somewhat of you tapping people on the shoulder and saying it's your turn to lead now, because so many people just show up in these leadership positions. You experienced that where you were a little bit skilled to be the leader you were supposed to be, and obviously you came short at that time, but now you're empowering others so that they too can be, do, and have that experience of what being a good leader is at the time that they're needed. Can you maybe comment a little bit on that? I know I touched on a lot of things.
I don't think I need to. Seriously, Prosper, you have summarized that. That's the highlight for your listeners. If your listeners are out there, please grab a pen and paper, write down this word Ubuntu, and I am because we are. Imagine if every leader took that on board. I'm a leader because I get the ability to influence you as a human and be my best version for you. And the only reason I'm a leader is because I've got a team that needs me to be the best version of me and to be a good human. Prosper, thank you. I don't know. That's the guy. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. That is next level. Imagine if every leader got that. I am because we are.
Absolutely.
Top shelf.
I will make sure that we've got all the links to the short notes where your people can go to. And I noticed the first thing that people can do is book a 15-minute upgrade review session or a 15-minute call, right?
Absolutely. So do that, and we go through some of the key skills. We actually look at your control, your care factor, and your courage, and we measure that, and we look to see if there's any activities that can come out of that. I'd love to offer your listeners a copy of one of our books. I'd love to offer them a pen as well. So, if any of your listeners are out there, please reach out. Please mention that you come through to us from Prosper, because I want, just to recognise how much great work Prosper does. So we are, the more you give, the more you get, Prosper. So we're very giving, and I just love to get the message out there because I've written 8 books, and I just, I'd love to, yes, they're for sale on our website. We'll send you one. You can have, yell out if you want more. So
Absolutely.
for your listeners, here to serve, Prosper.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I mean, that's literally leading, under pressure. I know I asked you to come on the podcast on short notice, and we managed to create something remarkable like this. So I quite like that so much about you. Now, before we wrap up, I mean, it will be remiss for me not to sort of ask you this question. I mean, there's a time when you were lying during the 5 weeks, you're lying in hospital. Obviously, you just didn't know what the future had in store for you, and you were recovering and things of that nature. If you would have been one of the nurses that came to administer painkillers, for you at that particular time, what sort of words would you have wanted to hear from somebody who's coming in and maybe letting you know that your life will be what you're experiencing today, Anton?
Ooh, that's such a great question. The nurses were tough in the burns unit, Prosper. I complained a lot, and finally they got sick of my whinging and said, "Stop it! You're lucky. You've only got to go through this for 5 weeks. There's people here for 6 months. Stop your whinging." Though, what if I was in a better frame of mind then? Because I was pretty dark when I was in the burns unit. I was down on life, woe me. But what I would have loved to hear was, I think, everyone that survives something major in their life does it for a reason, and they've got something yet great to achieve. And that's words from Viktor E. Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, from the Holocaust. The survivors went on to achieve something great in their life, and I feel like I'm destined to do something like that and to help leaders everywhere just to be better versions of themselves. So would love to hear those words then, and I might have got started sooner. But anyway, we are where we are.
I like that, because I obviously believe we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. I mean, for us to live our best lives, we need to learn all the experiences so that we will obviously be able to then contribute. And from what you're saying, I've learned one remarkable lesson here, Anton. It's whenever you're going through life, whether you're in the burns unit or you're being thrown across the hallway in an explosion, whatever it is, pay attention to what's happening, because one day you'll have a good story to tell on the Online Prosperity Show.
You can come on Prosper's podcast and tell your story too.
Fantastic. I mean, obviously, you've been there, you've got the burns receipts. Some people just tell, I've been burnt in the past, but you literally got burned and you've got the receipts to show for it. What's next? What can people expect, Anton?
Our vision is to be the world authority on leadership and people development, Prosper. And so we're really clear that we want to take our message far and wide. And, as a little growing business, we're really comfortable and confident that we can really make a difference on planet Earth. And that just takes showing up with authenticity and with connection and seeing the best in other humans, and just knowing that every leader has got the ability to improve their leaders. Most of our work, Prosper, is with high-performing teams and leaders, which is great. They just want to go to the next level. They're already there, really. And sometimes I'm talking to someone tomorrow one-on-one, and this person is such a high achiever. Their CEO said, Anton, this will be the easiest coaching program you ever do. We just want this high performer to be recognized and to see if this person can be even higher performer, but yes, some of our work is with leaders that aren't great performers. So you've got to see the best in everyone, and I've got to show up the same for all of those. And, I'm here to serve. I'm on the planet to serve, Prosper, and, I'll do that for as long as I live. I serve with content. You get more free stuff from us than you pay for elsewhere. I think in content. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll probably get bombarded with too much, but you'll get some gems in amongst it all. And I just know that there's people out there that will benefit from our work at the Guinea Group, and I just know it makes a difference. And our clients tell us that. We just got such a good testimonial. We've just got such we're 2.9 out of 3 from 80 odd organizations that have given us some feedback on our work. And so I know that our work makes a difference. But the only reason that I know that is, yes, the feedback, but I stay current. You know, too many people, leaders even, don't stay current. Like I'm still studying. I'm still looking at other humans and trying to work out, why did they do that? What is it about that person that makes them want to think that or say that or do that? What's the why? You know, like I'm like you. I ask really, really big questions, and probably sometimes deep questions, because I just need to understand. And so, you know, where to from here for the Guinea Group is, you know, world domination of the leadership space, hopefully, eventually. So, yeah, we're out there to serve, and we're out there to change, and we're out there to help people connect. So.
Absolutely. I think it was Zig Ziglar that said, help enough other people get what they want, and you too will get that which you want. And I think you, sir, are on course for that. And speaking of gems, you definitely understand that diamonds are formed under pressure, right? So if you really want to stand out, you have to accept the pressure that comes out of that. And speaking of more pressure, you know, if you look at everything that happens in life, especially let's just put it down to simple life beginning, which might be a seed. You know, when you're planting a seed, you putting it under earth, and it actually has to grow through that pressure in order for it to germinate into something remarkable. So whenever you see an apple seed, just question yourself, how many apples are in that? And I think, Anton, your life
Great analogy.
story and your experience have so much value. I can't wait to see what the future has in store for you. I mean, your near-death experiences to actually then inspiring leadership under pressure. I mean, you've shown that resilience, hope, and a strong vision can actually turn even the toughest of challenges into extraordinary success for any individual. So thank you for showing
You're a
that it
legend.
is possible.
Thanks for having me, Prosper. Thanks for being an amazing podcast host. You rock.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching right now, the first thing I want you to do is type in the comments under pressure, because Anton has promised that he is going to be sending books to those that are engaged. So me and Anton will be looking in the comments section there. If you type in the words under pressure, we'll reach out and get your address so we can send you a copy of Anton's book. And if his story resonated with you, make sure you rewatch this episode and take notes this time, because I know we went through and covered a lot of ground. And you should really highlight on his insights on leadership, which could be a game changer that you've been looking for. And if this is not your flavor of a video, send this to your leader. He might need it more than anything else. The person that is in charge of making sure you are safe at work needs to know who Anton is. So if your own psychological safety at work is important, this video is a must for the leaders that are above you. And while you're at it, just subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show for more inspiring conversations that will help you stop random acts of leadership and start creating a business that is actually profitable and enjoyable. Until next time, stay inspired and keep thriving. Bye for now.